Hello students, my name is Priya Saxena and today we are covering Unit 5 of Finance Specialization of the subject Management Financial and Services. Unit 5 will be covering banking, insurance, venture capital, factoring, forfeiting and bill discounting. We will be covering the first three topics, that is banking, insurance and venture capital, in this video. So let's start with banking. First of all, what is bank? I guess you all people know that a bank is a kind of financial institution whose primary activity is to act as a payment agent. That means the customer used to borrow and lend. They used to save their savings in the bank and they used to borrow for any kind of credit required. So bank is an Italian word which is derived from the word banco, and in simple words, a bank is a financial institution that accept deposit from the public, lend the money to the public and hence create the money. It is the money creator. Okay, so here accordingly we will be reading the type of banks. Now what are the type of banks we have? Above all is the Reserve Bank of India. Bank of India is basically the apex bank, we can say, in India, which controls the regulation of all the banks underlying RBI. Apart from that, RBI is the institution which will be making all the monetary policies in the system, in the financial system. So under this, let's start with the scheduled banks. What are the scheduled banks? Scheduled bank is one in which are registered under the second schedule of RBI. That means in the second schedule, accordingly the conditions are you have to have a capital of 5 lakhs and more, and some person has to be registered under the Banking Act. So those banks which are registered under the second schedule of banking system are known as the scheduled banks, and those which are not registered under the scheduled bank, they are the unscheduled banks. Under the scheduled banks comes the commercial bank. Now what is commercial bank? Commercial bank is basically a financial institution which performs the function of accepting the deposits from the public and giving loans to the public. That means the main aim of commercial banks is to create profit, to earn profit for themselves. So commercial banks are the banks which are basically working for the profits. Under the commercial banks come the public sector and the private sector banks. So I guess we all know what are the public and the private sector banks. Public banks are the banks whose stakeholding is more than 51%. Government stakeholding is more than 51% in the banks. So these are the public banks. For example, State Bank of India and other nationalized banks. Other nationalized banks in the sense all the national banks like Allahabad Bank is there, Central Bank is there, or Punjab National Bank is there. Such sort of banks whose in which the stakeholding of government is maximum, that are known as the public sector banks. Coming to the private sector banks are the banks in which the stakeholding is of some institution, some firm, some company or any individual. So these are the private sector banks. Under those private sector banks comes the Indian and the foreign banks. Indian banks means the banks which are working in India. The corporate office or the head office are in India, majorly incorporated in India. Talking about the foreign banks are the banks who those banks which belong to some foreign country. Foreign country means other than Indian company. It is the cross-border bank, and the branch banking is done over here in India. Like Standard Chartered is there, HSBC is there. These are few of the banks which are foreign banks. Standard Chartered is there. So these are the foreign banks who do not belong to India. They are doing the branch banking in India. Then comes the regional rural bank. Regional rural banks are basically the banks which cover some part of the state, that is the rural part of the state. They cover some region of the states. Basically, the main aim is to cater the rural people, because their needs and their wants are very different from the urban public or in general public. So the regional rural banks are established to cater the rural people, and the state in which the regional rural bank is there, they cover the rural area of that state. Coming to the next category is the cooperative banks. Now, what are the cooperative banks? Cooperative banks are basically a financial entity which belongs to its member. That means the owners and the customers themselves are the members of that bank, and operate in a particular region. So cooperative bank are basically banks developed by a society, and they usually cater the needs of the members of that particular bank. Coming to the bifurcation, state cooperative bank, that means the banks which are working on the state level. Coming to the central cooperative bank, that means working on a central level, central in the sense regional level, national level. And then comes the primary credits societies. Primary credit societies are basically the association of members residing in some particular locality, and the members of the bank and the non-members of the bank both can be get the benefits of that particular bank. So this is the structure of banking system in India. Moving ahead, we will be covering few features in the payment systems. Talking about the features, what banks basically do, what are the characteristics of banking. So they accept the deposits from the public. Obviously, we do save our savings in the bank. Lending, that means they gives us credit. Check issuance, understood it. Dealing in various financial instruments. Obviously, they deals with the various investment alternatives we have. Forex trading, foreign exchange trading. Commodity financing, that means for any sort of commodity you can get the credit from the bank. Trading of the securities is also done by few of the modern banks. Custodian function, we have read above. Mutual funds custodian means the one who is dealing with the disbursement of the interest earned. Issuance of letter of credit and bill discounting, it is regulated by RBI. Merchant banking and other financial services are the other features of bank. Now, talking about the payment system of banks. Nowadays, banks are providing us with different sort of payment system. Here I have mentioned 5 sort of payment system. So let's discuss it. Before NEFT, I am going to explain EFT, because NEFT is basically the improvised version of NEFT. So EFT is electronic fund transfer. Now, what is electronic fund transfer? This is basically initially was known as RBI EFT. That means the RBI used to allow few of the banks for the services of internet banking or for internet transfer. So electronically fund transfer was initially started by few of the bank or few of the centers in India, and it was allowed by RBI. So electronic fund transfer is the very first scheme of technological banking. Now, let's come to NEFT. NEFT is National Electronic Fund Transfer. National Electronic Fund Transfer means under this method, the fund is transferred to the people in similar banks or the other branches or any other bank as well. And the major thing is these are through this scheme, you banks usually settle down the credit or the transfer within the batches. That means from 9 a.m. to around 6 a.m. they settle the transactions in 12 different batches. So when they have a bulk of NEFT to be done, they settle it in the batches. Talking about RTGS. Now, RTGS is a real-time gross settlement. See, it is real-time gross settlement means as soon as you transfer the money, the person at the other end will get it immediately. But there are few disadvantages. Like, it is not for the individuals like us. The business person usually use such kind of RTGS. The main thing is the minimum limit for the transfer of money is 2 lakhs. That means they need 2 lakh, minimum amount of 2 lakhs is needed to transfer, and there is no upper limit specified by the bank, and the funds get transferred almost immediately. Then comes the IMPS. Now, IMPS or immediate payment service is more beneficial than NEFT. They are also the real time or the immediate fund settlement facility. And the best thing is this: the minimum amount to transfer is rupee 1, and the maximum amount is 2 lakh. So for the real time or for the transfer of money up to 2 lakh, you can use RTGS, you can use IMPS, and above that you can use RTGS. Then coming to the next payment system, that is UPI. Now, what is UPI? It is Unified Payment Interface. You must have experienced the transfer of the money through Paytm or the Bhim app or the Google Pay, Phone Pay, and like so many things are there. So all the unified payment interface is basically a system that allow you people to link yourself to one bank account in a single smartphone app. That means you make transfer without providing any account number. You get the fund transfer without giving any kind of fund transfer or the account number or IFSC code or branching details, bank branch details, etc. So nothing is required. What is required is only your mobile number. So this is the most safest thing we are having nowadays. So unified payment interface is basically used in the mobile phones, and it is for the smartphone apps. So here we are done with the payment systems. Coming to the functions of commercial banks, we can divide all the functions into 3 parts: basic, agency, and general utility. Basic means the core function which banks are doing. Agency functions means they are working as an agent, and general utility means extra things which are provided to individuals. So the basic functions include accepting the deposits. Obviously, saving deposits are there, fixed deposits are there, current deposits are there, and recurring deposits are there. I guess you all people know about all these kind of deposits. Home loan accounts. Then advancing of loans. That means they advance the loans, they give the credit. So they give credit according to call money advances, cash credits are there, overdraft facilities are there in the bank, discounting of bill of exchange is there, term loans are there, and all because of all these advances of loan, they create the credit. They give credit and create money. That means they multiply money in the economy. Now, talking about the agency function, or the functions in which banks are acting as an mediator, as an intermediate agent. So here comes the remittance of funds. Remittance of funds means you simply transfer money from foreign to your home country. That means you are working abroad and you want to transfer your money to your parents. That time you are using the remittance of funds, because the exchange of currency is there. Then comes the collection and the payment of credit instruments. Obviously, there are many such credit instruments for which you have to do the collection and the payment. Execution of standing hours, purchase and sale of securities is being done. Collection of dividends, obviously dividends on shares and interest on debentures. Trustees and executors of wills. All the wills are being passed by banks and they execute that. Whatever law is saying in the will, lawful will is there, the banks used to execute it. Representation and correspondence, there are many such facilities. General utility functions covers the lockers facility we are getting nowadays, gift check, letter of credit, underwriting contract, provide statistical data for the researchers, provide exchange facility, foreign exchange facilities are there, merchant banking services are there, and they act as a referee. They are referee for many more settlement cases. Now, talking about next is the system of bank. System of bank is what type of system or what type of organizational setup they have. So, banking system first of all includes the unit banking. Unit banking means a bank which is independent and does not have any connecting banks with themselves. They are usually small banks that provide financial services to the local community people. Then comes to branch banking. Branch banking refers to a bank that is connected to one or more bank, obviously. Then comes the chain bank. Chain bank is a system, under which different names come under the common control. Common control means the management or the shareholders of the banks are common. Their directors, trustees, board of directors, you can say, are common. For example, Karur Vyasa and Lakshmi Vilas. These are the two different banks working in India, but then their heads or the directors, the board of directors or the management is same for both the banks. Talking about group banking. Group banking is simply when banks offer or incentives to whole group of people. Like Systic is having a group banking of Bank of Baroda. In this case, Bank of Baroda is catering each and every person in the organization. So this is known as the group banking. Then we'll come to deposit bankings. It's very simple. The banks which take only deposits and they do not lend money. Investment banking that helps individuals or organizations to raise capital for the organization, for the firm. So investment banking, it does that. Okay. And then come the mixed banking. Any of the above, if they are doing any kind of mixed banking system, then it is mixed banking. Okay. Coming to the organizational setup, that means how is the organizational or how is the structure of the banking organization. There are few of the departments that come under banking system. One is the legal department, then loan department, operations are there, foreign exchange they do, organization and methods, economic and statistics they provide, public relations are there, management development is there, administration department is there, audit and inspection has to be there, and the investment department is there. Now, this types of banking, you will get hundreds of types of banks now. So one is the saving bank. Saving banks allows you to save your deposits or save your income. Then if we talk about the commercial banks, I have told you commercial bank which are working for earning the profit. Then comes the retail banks. Retail banks means banking at your doorstep. Then industrial development bank. Industrial development bank means the banks which are working for the development of the industries. Then come offshore bank. Offshore bank is nothing but foreign banks. That means banks from any other uh, country. Then comes the Islamic banking. Islamic banking is what? Islamic banking is Muslim banking. So this is what the Islamic banking is. So apart from all these things, I have to tell you about the non-performing assets. See, Islamic law was basically the banks which adhere to the Islamic laws. These were the Islamic banking. Now, at the end, as we are reading bank, so we should know what is NPA, that is non-performing asset. Guys, non-performing asset is any kind of loan or credit of a bank given to any individual, any firm, any organization, any business in which the principal amount and the interest payment remain overdue for more than 90 days. That means if you are particularly not filling up your, not giving up your interest or not giving up your installment for more than 90 days, then it is treated as the non-performing asset. Reading it the so-called definition, a non-performing asset basically means an asset which has ceased to generate income for the bank. That means it is not at all a income generation for the bank. According to Narasimha Committee, non-performing assets means a credit facility in respect of which the interest or the installment remains past due for a period of 4 quarters. An amount under any of the credit facilities is to be as past due when it has remained outstanding for 30 days. Moreover, if one of the account of a borrower under the new norms is in NPA, all of the account of the borrowers will be treated as NPA. That means if you are having multiple accounts in the bank, in the so-called bank, then all your accounts will be treated as non-performing assets. So here we are done with the banking system. The second topic in the unit number 5th is insurance. Now, what is insurance? Insurance in simple term is financial protection for any kind of risk, or we can say for any kind of loss. It could be a property loss, it could be the life loss, it could be the health loss, or any kind of loss is the against which we are giving, or some financial institutions are giving you financial protection. It is known as insurance. Okay, so moving forward towards the definition. The definition says insurance is a form of contract agreement under which one party agrees to return for a consideration to pay an agreed amount of money to another party to make good a loss, damage or injury to something or of value in which the insured has an interest as a result of some uncertain event. That means it is a legal contract between one party and the other. Who is the one party? The insurance bearer is the one party and the other party is the insurance company. So they have the legal binding, the legal agreement of paying against the loss or damage or any kind of injury for a something of value. That means the insured item has to have some sort of value in it. I cannot insure a pen, correct, because it doesn't make any sense. It is not that much valuable. But if I want to insure a pen with a diamond on it, I can insure it, because then it makes it valuable. So anything which is valuable, it can be insured. Now, what is the purpose of insurance? To safeguard the interest of insured, setting the norms for carrying out the business of insurance, and minimizing disputes. Talking about the importance of insurance, it provides protection against occurrence of uncertain events. Obviously, it is a protection for you people, device for eliminating risk, and then sharing losses. If I am having risk of losing any kind of thing or loss of funds, then obviously I can insure it, and it is by insurance that we share the losses. That means whatever I have, whatever loss I have incurred, the insurance company is sharing it. Cooperative method of spreading risk. Obviously, if I am risky, then the insurance company itself cooperate with me for the spreading of the risk. Facilitates the international trade. Obviously, international trades क्यों? Because whatever import and export of things or products or whatever we do, we usually insure it for any kind of marine loss or fire loss or some kind of loss in the air. So it facilitates the international trade, because in any of the case I'm getting back the money of the loss, equivalent to loss. Now, serves as an agency of capital formation. Obviously, it is making capital. Financial support is there, then medical support, because you people are having health insurance, so medical support is there. Then source of employment. As you are getting the insurance, you are basically creating employment for the people. Now, talking about the insurance, the types of insurance. See, there are basically two types of insurance in India. One is treated as the life insurance, that means the insurance of life, and the other is the non-life insurance, that means the things which are non-living, non-life insurance. These things are basically these things comes under general insurance. If I am insuring my house, it is general insurance. If I am insuring my life, my life is life insurance. So under the general insurance come many of the things. We'll be reading it. First of all, I am going to tell you about the general insurance. General insurance include the fire insurance, any loss due to fire. Marine insurance, that means any loss because of sailing. Motor insurance, accident insurance, credit insurance, where you are giving credit to someone and maybe you are not sure that they'll be giving it back and not, then you can do insurance for the credit. Public liability insurance, whatever liability you are giving on public, that is public liability insurance. Then property or the casualty insurance, then fidelity insurance, burglary insurance, workmen compensation insurance, unemployment insurance is there, national health insurance is there, cash transit insurance is there, and then the employment liability insurance, that means you are liable to for the employments. These are few kind of insurances we have. Now, if I talk about the life insurance, these are the type of life insurance. Basically, they are insuring the life of the individual, but what sort of policies they are giving, this is what we are talking about. The term policy is there, whole life insurance policy is there, endowment policy is there, money back, annuity, ULIP, and group insurance. Let's talk about it one by one. Term policy. Term policy is anything which is for a limited period of time. For these much of time I am insuring my life. अगर 6 months में मर गई तो I'll be getting my month, I'll be getting the sum assured, or if I doesn't die, all my money will go. Okay. Then whole life insurance, that means you are paying bit of amount every year or every month. And whole life insurance means until and unless you are alive, you are insured. The day you die, you will get the sum assured. Now, talking about the endowment policies. Endowment policy is nothing but getting your future secure. That means you are paying your premiums for few time, and then there is a sum assured which you will be getting in the upcoming days. So these are what the endowment policy talks about. About the money back policy, whatever you have, whatever premium you are giving, if you doesn't die, you will be getting back that money. Annuity policy, that means annually, you are basically paying premium annually. Basically all these annuity kind of life insurance, you are having the pension type of things also. That means annually you pay the premium, and when you are above 60, you will be getting the part of your premium as a pension to survive for your livelihood. Then comes the ULIP, that is unit linked insurance plans. These are basically the plans which are which the premium you pay is further being invested in the stock market, and the price or the return you will get also depends on the market price of the shares you invest in. So when your investment is again invested to earn, then it is known as basically the ULIP insurance. Then comes the group insurance. Group insurance means again a firm, employers और employee insurance as a whole. पूरी कंपनी का हमने इंश्योरेंस कर रखा है. So that means each and every employee in the company is being insured by a firm. So when such kind of bulk insurances are done, these are known as the group insurance. Now, talking about the principles of the insurance. If we talk about the principles of the insurance, there are basically 7 principles of insurance. Now, the first is the insurable interest. Insurable interest means whatever I'm getting insured, whatever thing or a person I'm getting insured must have some insurable value. Or that means the example I gave, I cannot insure a pen because its value is very less and it doesn't gives loss to anybody. Correct? So the thing whichever thing you are insuring, that must have some or the other insurable value. Coming to the principle of utmost good faith. Now, what is utmost good faith means? Having faith, having belief in the company in which you are investing, and keeping that faith within you yourself also. That means whatever documents you are sharing with the company should be correct up to your knowledge. That means the insurance contract must be signed by both the parties. Obviously, I'll be the signee and the company will be the signee, the insurer and the insured. So they both should have some sort of good faith and belief. They must be willing to disclose all the information related to themselves, and true information, true information which is a subjective matter of insurance. Now, coming to the principle of indemnity. Indemnity is basically indemnification is paying from your pocket. First, the owner, like I have to pay from my pocket, and then the company will pay to me. Okay, so what we do? That means in the principle of indemnity, the insurance contract should be predicted An insurance contract is signed only for getting protection against unpredictable financial loss. An insurance contract is not for making profit. Its sole purpose is to give compensation. That means compensation of in case of any damage or loss. So if they are compensating me, there should be some sort of damage or some sort of loss arising out of it. Now talking about the subrogation, principle of subrogation says when the insured is compensated for the loss, I mean, when I am compensated for any sort of loss due to the damage in some property or anything, then the ownership of such property shift to the insurer. That means it's very simple. If I'm having a house and my house gets to fire and I have my house insured, so I'll be getting the all the money from the insurance company what I have lost. But in this case, the rights of the property, the ownership of the house will remain with the insurer. Fine. Now coming to the principle of contribution. Now the principle of contribution says that the insured can claim the compensation only to the extent of actual loss. That means whatever you have lost, it should be actual. Principle of contribution says that the compensation, the actual compensation, whatever you have lost, you can claim it from 2 or 3 insurer, but it should be up to the quantity of loss. Let me explain it. See, if I am saying I have a loss of 80,000 rupees and I am having an insurance of 3 different companies, then what I will do, I can opt this insurance from a single company up to 80,000. If I am opting for getting this insurance claim for all these 3 companies, then what I will have to do, I will have to divide my loss thing in between these 3. Means from one I will be getting 20,000 rupees, from one I will be getting 30,000 rupees, and again from the one I will be getting 30,000 rupees. So here the total amount of loss should be 80,000 and it is claimed by contribution of different companies. So this is the principle of contribution. Now principle of cause proxima. Now what this principle of cause proxima says, that obviously the insurance company will first scrutinize about the cause of the loss, the cause or the reason for the damage of the asset. Now for this thing, what they do, they basically find out the cause which is nearest to the damage. That means suppose I am a company, I have a export company, and my consignment is going for the some or the other foreign company. Then my consignment basically get damaged because of water. Fine, my ship was under the ship sank in the water. And why it got sank? Because there is a leakage in the pipe, and that pipe was eaten by some sort of rat. Okay, now this is a picture of a insurance the damage. And the damage happened because the water gets in the ship and the ship sank. But why the water gets in the ship? Because there was a rat in the ship which eaten up the pipe. So because of this, the nearest insurance reason could be because the ship sank into the water, because they do not insure for the rat biting, they insure for the goods sank. That means they give us the marine insurance. Now, the principle of mitigation of loss. What does it say? It says that the insurer who has taken the insurance must always try, insured must always try his level best to minimize the loss they are experiencing. That means in any kind of outbreak of fire or some kind of like something like that, they should not sit back and think, yeah, I'm having insurance, I'll get the money, don't you worry. They should try to minimize the fire, or by calling up the ambulance, or by using fire extinguishers, something like that. So the principle of mitigation of loss says that insured must always try to minimize the loss of the property from their end also. They should not sit and let the things go on like that. So these are the 7 principles of insurance. This I have already shared with you, the life insurance plans. Now comes the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. That means the IRDAI. Now, what does this IRDAI do? This is Insurance Regulatory Development Authority, and it regulates the insurance company, and it is this regulatory body is under the Government of India in order to protect the good of policyholders, regulate and promote the business, ensure the ethical business of insurance. Okay, and for the powers and functions of IRDA, you people can refer unit number 2, because we have covered this IRDA in the regulatory framework of India. Correct? So here are few of the major players of insurance in India. You can see there are many kind of public and private sector insurance firms. There we have SBI Life, we have HDFC Life, we have Tata AIG, PNB MetLife, Kotak Life Mahindra is there, ICICI Prudential is there, ING Vyasa is there. So there are a hell lot of companies which are giving good competition to each other in the insurance market. So that's all with insurance. Now, moving forward towards the third and the last topic of the unit, that is venture capital. Now, what is venture capital? Venture capital is basically a kind of private equity. Private equity means a single person or a institution is investing in the business, and they are investing in the business of a kind of startup in which they are starting up, and there is a hell lot of opportunities for the business to grow. The returns in the business are very high. So venture capital is a form of equity and a type of financing that investors provide to startup companies or the small businesses that are believed to have long-term growth potential. That means in a long term they will be giving higher returns and higher growths. Now, who is the venture capitalist? Venture capitalist is the person or the firm that makes venture investments. So these are known as the venture capitalist. These venture capitalists are expected to bring managerial and technical expertise as well to the capital where they invest. That means they also give their expertise to the startup businesses. For this example, we are having the Ola. Ola is a startup of a person in which Tata has invested Ratan Tata has invested in the firm as a venture capitalist. So, this is the example. Talking about the characteristics of venture capital, obviously there is a higher risk. We don't know, it is just the starting stage of the business. We don't know whether the business will gives us growth, it will rise, or it will get back to the dustbins. So there is high risk. Obviously, if there is a high risk, there are high returns. They give long-term potential growth. equity investment is there. Illiquidity means since you are the private equity owner, you're investing a lump sum amount in the business. That means you are creating assets, the fixed assets for the business, and for that you cannot liquidize it immediately. That means you will not be getting the cash you have invested immediately. You will have to wait for the time the business starts earning. Investment in new technologies is there. New market concept or new product application should be there. We have seen it. It should be a new business idea. It should be a startup, an innovative startup. Now, close involvement of investor. Obviously, if you have invested a huge amount of money, definitely you are going to involve yourself in the business. Now, what are the objectives of the venture capital financing? They seek new directions. These are the startups. So obviously some new directions in the market has to be seen. Support the existing businesses. Existing businesses को भी support करते हैं. Provide windows for the new technology. Provide windows for the new market. And developing new products or some sort of improvement in the manufacturing processes. So these are the objectives of venture capital financing. Now, if you talk about the stages in the venture capital financing, what are the stages? So they usually do financing in 4 stages. First stage is the seed stage. Seed stage means the startup. When you are at the level of idea only, you have not developed anything, you are not having the physical existence of your business. So this is the capital provided for the business idea, and it is just at this time it is just a business concept even before the company has started. Then comes the early stage or the first round of financing. Now here the capital for the venture that has successfully passed the initial startup phase, the business plan has been written and product in the development. That means here we start the establishment of the firm. In the early stage it was just a business idea, so everything was going up for the compliances thing, the compliances material, taking permission from the authorities and all. And here the early stages, the first round of financing, where you basically invest your money and the businessman starts getting or acquiring the fixed assets for starting your business. Then comes the expansion stage. Expansion stage is basically the second round of stage and the capital for a venture that already has customers but it is not yet not profitable. Means the business operations have been started, but yes, the business is still not profitable. So what they do? They do the second round of financing for their expansion, and this expansion can be in sort of the product expansion, product diversification, or some sort of geographic expansion. Then so these sort of expansions, this sort of marketing of your product or growth of the company, they do the second stage financing. Coming to the later stage or the third round of financing. Now, what is later stage and third round of financing? Here, the financing is necessary before being profitable. That means it is again the area where the business is yet not more profitable. In this case, money is used by profitable companies to be able to expand more aggressively than they could do otherwise. Means here they expand or they start earning aggressively. Now, obviously, if you have invested, you have to take exit from the venture capital. Means it's not like that you will always be the part. You can be the part of the business, but in case if you want to exit, what you will do? you can opt for IPOs. That means the company can plan for going public. That means getting fund from the publics. Acquisition by the another company. If you don't want to be the part of this, then you can be acquired by some sort of other company. Okay. Repurchase of venture capitalist share by the investor. That means if I am the venture capitalist, I am actually selling my equity off, and any investee company can take my ownership. Purchase of venture capitalist share by the third party, or in case if not by the invested company, any other third party can opt for the purchase of venture capitalists share. Here I have explained. See, at the seed company, you are the angel investors basically. You are coming at a point where they need money, so you are angel investors. Then starts the second and the third stage, the early stage financing. Then the early stage financing के बाद second stage financing. Okay, and then later, that means third stage financing. This we call mezzanine. Okay, and then the exit. Once the business has started earning, you can actually take your exit from the venture capitalist. Now, venture capitalist in India. See, Indian Venture Capital Association, IVCA, based in Delhi, since 1993 is the association of such venture capitalists in India, and it is a member-based organization. That means all the venture capitalists are members of this organization. They represent venture capital and the private equity firms as well. Okay, then promotes industry within the India throughout the world. They promotes the venture capitalist industry within the India and cross borders. Then encourage investment in high growth companies. They doesn't only represent the association, but they also encourage investors to invest for the high growth companies. So here we end with the 3 topics of unit number 5, that is banking, insurance and venture capital. The part 2 of unit number 5 will be coming soon. Till then, thank you.